Into this life we're born, riders on the storm.
Bom dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, you gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with Good Morning Portugal show live stream and podcast. And if you could keep your voices down a little bit, that would be great this morning, because last night I tried the Douro white versus the Setúbal white, as you can see on your screen there. The Kopke, which, how would you say that, Mrs. M? Kopke?
I'd say Kopke.
Kopke versus the Altopina. Mrs. M is here. Again, Mrs. M, if you could just whisper this morning, that would be fantastic. You cannot be seen on the screen yet because we are looking at bottles of wine, and it doesn't make me feel good. This picture that you took of me yesterday was before the wine. It was quite the day it turned out yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you've got this lovely kind of Eastern way of
processing alcohol.
No, an Eastern way of knowing what your body needs, and so
very good.
you have
Eastern,
no shame or embarrassment or anything about having a little cat nap,
sleeping on a park bench.
Yeah, and I think it's really kind of delightful.
Right, I think it might have challenged a few people's prejudices.
Really?
Yes. It reminds me. This has been coming up quite a lot. We need to watch Zoolander again, don't we? This is the derelict look, possibly. So
it's
one
a nice
comment.
Shirt.
It is a nice shirt.
Someone said it was pink. It's actually, it does look pink.
It's gingham, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
almost
red gingham.
And it was noted as well, because of my excellent upbringing, that I didn't put my feet on the park bench. I took up the whole park bench with my body, thereby stopping pregnant women and old ladies sitting down. There were other benches available.
There were lots of benches.
Yeah, and all they had to do was take a ticket and join the queue. And as soon as I finished my nap, they could come onto the bench themselves.
So what we usually do, like if we go to a park and we're watching the kids and they're all playing and everything, you say, "Oh, I just want to have a little nap."
Just have a little 40 winks.
And you shunt over to my lap and you put your head on my lap.
Isn't one of my great pleasures in life.
Yeah, it's I like it too. I love like holding you and you know, stroking your forehead and whatnot whilst
yes. Okay, well let us know what you think.
So do you do that?
Oh, that's right. Then
okay?
You ran off and my head unceremoniously crashed onto the bench. And that's why I was asleep for 10 minutes. I was actually concussed slightly there in that picture.
It's a beautiful park. Let us know if you know which one it is.
It's actually it's named in my honor almost, Dom Carlos Park, isn't it? That's just Dom Carlos over there having a sleep.
Yeah.
Don't disturb him. He's very grumpy.
Well, to be fair, I've been snoring for the last week.
You have.
I've had tonsillitis.
God. Yes, don't get tonsillitis. Worse still, don't have a partner who's got tonsillitis and snoring their way through the into the early hours of the morning. Okay, 7 o'clock. T-Duck was in. Thank you for being here, Mrs. M. Got a few pithy insights and contributions this morning. Those are most welcome, of course, here on the Good Morning Portugal show. I imagine there'll be a few pithy insights and contributions from people talking about UBI. UBI, funnily enough,
do you know what? I didn't see any of it in my feed. I didn't see any of it in my feed at all.
So conspiracy mums are not talking about UBI.
I don't connect it. Oh, look, our banana palms leaf is unfurling. Sorry.
As we speak.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Not a euphemism.
There isn't. If there is such a place as conspiracy mums, it's not one I.
If there isn't, we should start it. That'll be a really good busy.
You've been going on about it for a few years.
Busy, angry site. Conspiracymums.net. Bon dia alegria, gumpers from T-Duck at 7 o'clock. Good luck with everything that you're doing today.
Oh, yes.
I've got an early appointments as T-Duck, so getting an early start today. Hopefully these posts won't disappear. Well, they haven't yet. Shall I read them quickly before they?
Do they disappear then?
They can do.
Really?
That might be something to do with me stopping and starting the show before. I don't know, or something to do with YouTube. I'm not entirely sure.
Love that.
I have to say. Okay, let's go straight to it then. Mel Robbins
Yeah.
was great a value yesterday, comparing people to potatoes and eggs.
That was fantastic.
It was.
Well, how do you think?
I never know. Am I an
I'm-
egg or a potato?
I think I'm an egg.
Mm-hmm.
That softens. So, I toughen up when
Then
I'm
you're
in
not an
hot
egg.
water.
Yeah, so you're an egg.
And then later I yield from the whole experience. I soften like a potato.
As you're gently peeled. Okay. Maybe. Or rolled around the countertop.
How do you do
breaking up all the shell so none of it goes in the egg mayonnaise. Okay, let's see what Mel Robbins. Well, I wasn't a little dig at your culinary skills. I think your Michelin,
no.
I think
I
your
was
Michelin
thinking-
star is safe, and contrary to popular assertions last
No,
week.
I had a completely different thought then
What?
when he said egg mayonnaise and like,
Really?
yeah.
Okay. You did ask me to wash my beard first thing this morning. Is
Well,
that
have
what
you?
you
Have
do?
you done it?
I have done it,
Can I
yeah.
smell
But
it?
no, please don't smell my beard live on air. That is really quite a repulsive idea. Deep thought, you need to hear this loud and clear. No one is coming. It's up to you. Oh, more. Yeah, definitely pithy wisdom from Mel
Yeah, it's
Robbins
good.
this morning. Mel Robbins, okay, is known for her TEDx talk, How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over. That's probably quite a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or as we say in Portuguese, unhitting yourself.
What?
Unhit yourself. As is what Portuguese people say for getting your life organized. I don't know, there's a nice way of saying undefecate yourself. Is a
Oh,
Portuguese saying,
is
which is
it?
really good, isn't it? Very down to earth.
Yeah.
Pithy in Portuguese.
Yes, very
Portuguese
grounded.
are pithy, aren't they?
Yes, they're great.
Grounded and pithy. Yes. Melanie Robbins, known for her TED talk then, or TEDx talk. Are they going to be TED Y talks and TED Z
What, for
talk?
different generations?
TED
or-
Z. I'm just working on my TED Z. I'm just talking in the park just to the person next to me. It's a red bench, and you have to keep it to, well, you talk for as long as you want.
It's an intimate chat,
Yeah,
isn't it?
might even fall asleep halfway through it.
What would your
TED Z coming to
what
a
would
park
your-
bench near you
What
soon.
would your TED Z talk be?
How to power snooze in the park, obviously, and how not to get a hangover after drinking just 2 glasses of wine, which seems to be what happened last night.
Bless you. It's your
Very good job, Terence Austin. Really good. And so good, in fact, that we got a lovely review this morning from, where's it gone? We did have a review. Let me see if I can bring it to the screen for you now. Thank you, Mel Robbins, for that. Rather good. Got some Tony time coming up in about 20 minutes. Antonio Barbosa, fresh from his trade mission. He'll be telling us about how excited people got hanging out with him in the north of Portugal and Spain, and probably down in the south of Portugal as well. I think they had a great time. They might still be having a great time. We'll find out how the trade mission is going on. Helena McClafferty last night was enjoying the wine tasting so much she forgot to put the chili powder in her chili. Ended up with a mince, like a hospital meal, by the sound of it. So sorry about that. It wasn't my fault. It was Terence being excellent. Terence and Ben.
Yeah, they look great, didn't they? They look very dapper.
They did. Both had bow ties on. They did a magic trick during the wine tasting as well. And was it something we said? Tony came in and then had left again.
Yeah.
They did a magic trick where there is the Winky Trophy for the worst pool player. Yeah, the Winky Trophy up there in Alviagra. And Garvo is the current owner. And they put this bust, it was like Michelangelo's David, in a bag and started smashing it with a hammer. And I just thought it was going to be, look, nothing, no problem. It'd be like David Blaine or that fella, Magic for Humans, whatever he's called. What's he called? Magic for Humans guy.
Oh, I can't remember.
No, you.
Yeah,
nor can you.
I know who he is, though. He's great.
Well, you're expecting the marble bust to come out unscathed, but it was broken into a jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, no, really?
It was, yeah. So the Winky Trophy for the worst pool player has been smashed.
So
You should have seen the look on Garvo's face as they smashed his Winky Trophy up.
Haven't they been passing that between them?
They
for
have
years?
been passing it between them. It came with the house, apparently. It's one of those fantastic things. Oh, here's a good question for you.
Oh, no.
What,
So
are you upset about the Winky
It was
Trophy?
that how their
I
magic
imagine they
trick
might be able to
ended.
replace it at the Chinese shop. Or just get something else. It wasn't. I don't think it was a family heirloom. If it was a family heirloom, they are in so much trouble.
That's the worst magic trick ever.
I think. Should we pretend to be?
They didn't actually do any magic, did they?
What we need to do. We did. It was like Tommy Cooper magic. It was not. It was magic not for humans. It was inhumane magic. Basically, the Winky Trophy smashed to pieces. The look, somewhat crestfallen look on Garvo's
no.
face.
I need to
You
play
don't
that
sound
back and
very
have a look at it.
sympathetic.
No, I mean, well,
Right.
poor
Poor Gary.
Poor Gary. That must have been a shock because that's a
even though
routine,
it
isn't
celebrates how bad he is at pool, he didn't want his Winky trophy smashed into pieces like that, I don't suppose.
in public as well.
And what we could do, we could ring up later on in the house, can we? And we say, hello, my name is Giuseppe from the Italian Museum, and we understand that there was a bust by Michelangelo in the Alviagra area of Portugal. I'm trying to trace it because we want it back for our museum in Roma. It's worth millions of euros.
Is he Italian or German?
Okay.
Sorry. That's very
I
good.
will work on that prank call. All right, Kane Sabia then. Moving on this morning. People are very quiet this morning. Are they pondering UBI, free money? Do get free money, but do as your government tells you is what conspiracy mums might be fearing with that. Baddy's got great news as well. No, people are not quiet. Lots of comments coming in. The only magic they did was making a bottle of wine disappear. Yes, several. They had guests, Norman and Nikki, who I'll be meeting later on today, who really enjoyed the Portuguese wine. So, yes, like that smash button, smash that Winky trophy, and make your grandchildren a jigsaw puzzle. Don't like this bit of the Winky trophy, Granddad. Put it down. Oh.
Did it actually have a Winky on?
That's why it's called the Winky trophy.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know which of the Austin brothers it was modelled on, and I didn't want to ask
how big it was or whether it was
who it was,
vital
basically.
part
Yeah.
of the trophy.
All right, Kane Sabia then. Who knew? Who knew? You're much happier with this feature, I think, since it no longer features Ugo himself, Ugo Nunu. The Pyrheliophorus was a device similar to a burning glass, which I don't know what that is either, created by the Portuguese priest Manuel Antonio Gomes. This large device used several reflecting mirrors to concentrate sunlight into a common point. It's an early laser to melt many different types of materials using solar energy. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Another fantastic Portuguese invention. The Pyrheliophorus, forest, I guess, being fire, right? Pyrhelio, I don't know what that is. You Latin scholars, can you help us out with this? Was one of the main attractions of the St. Louis World Fair. Meet me in St. Louis, at the World Fair in 1904. And it was awarded with 2 gold medals and 1 silver medal. The Pyrheliophorus would have been as exciting as the latest iPhone in its day.
Yeah, I'm guessing
people
it was.
wouldn't have queued around the block for one, I don't suppose. Do you think it was marketed as the latest? It's a bit like air fryers of our time, wasn't it? Have you got one of those Pyrheliophorus? Can't wait to singe my chicken with that. Singe your chicken now with a special offer, 3 for the price of 2. What is it? I know you're wanting to say something about this thing.
No, it's fine. Right. I mean, when I was just like when you were describing it, I was imagining solar cookers. Because like when you read it, I didn't think it was going to be used for cooking.
Right.
Like, can you scooch back up?
Like a sort of scientific.
I thought it was maybe like
a weapon.
I was thinking it was to use, like, I don't know, in manufacturing or something like that.
Or it would have the Spaniards in their galleons, like, turn back! The Portuguese have got their Pyrheliophorus out, and they're going to singe our sails with it.
Yes, that's exactly how I thought.
Yes.
And so when you mentioned food and singeing a chicken, I was imagining using that technology to build a solar cooker.
Well, that's
one of the things we've got
exists,
on our list of things to do
our
at some
survival
point.
list.
Yeah.
Solar cooker. Make a solar cooker. Save water. Make a solar cooker.
Yeah.
If I tell you, Mark, oh no, okay, that's a dad joke. These dad jokes are very good this morning. Okay, we'll let you have one of these. I wonder if it helps with snoring, Mrs. M. I bought a sleep mask, but I can't see myself wearing it. But hey,
very good.
Good. We'll come back to more of those later on with John Heimbach, who also joins us, and he can talk us through those lovely Celtic settlements that he found. You liking that joke?
Yes, very good.
Okay, bon dia, campo. So Antonio Barbosa joining us at 9. John Heimbach joining us at 9:30. And at 10, if you want to talk about UBI, got a very good little. I can't say who it's from, just in case they don't want me to credit them. They should be proud of what they've written. But I've had a little treatise about UBI. And I put on Facebook yesterday, I'm all for UBI. I'm not, love the idea of UBI, hate the idea of a government administering it.
Yes.
Administering it. And I got called a communist for my trouble.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of those excellent polarizing topics, I think.
Well, you're communist because you like the idea of the UBI.
Well, I don't really like. I mean, it was a tongue-in-cheek reference about UBI because there's no other way of having UBI without a government administering it. So I don't think it's sufficient unto the day. Is the good Lord's UBI? We all get a universal basic income, don't we? Of breath and light and sunshine and fruit on the trees and so on. It's just that we've been impaired or diverted from receiving those benefits, or distracted, you could say. Can't keep blaming the government for everything, Right, born to you gumpers. Hope you're all doing
I can
well.
give it a go, though.
You do, don't you? An early start for me as well as Thunder Duck TD today, as Mrs. T is off to Scotland for a few days with friends, and I have to run her to the station. Now, when Coach Turner says run you to the station, he probably does expect you to put your trainers on and blows a whistle.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Then he blows the
God.
whistle. And they're like, I'm going to run you to the station. Now, come on! And he runs behind you with another trainer, slapping your shins and calves like an old PE teacher.
Oh my God!
Remember those days?
Yeah.
I'm about to run you to
PE
the station.
teachers, yikes!
Yes.
Yeah, they used to slap
Having
our
a cigarette
bottoms.
whilst watching you shower. I know.
Yes,
I heard
not
about your
nice.
school. God's God tip of the day. If you haven't done, did the teacher say, anyone else want a cigarette? Hurry up in the shower there.
No.
If you haven't done any exercise for a while, the most difficult part is starting. Isn't it? It's the same, isn't it? With sex, everything. The most difficult part, cooking, you name it. The most difficult part is starting.
Seriously.
Just tell me something in life where the most difficult part is not starting. I can wait. See, case closed. Tony's got a few ideas on this.
Ending
is the hardest. What?
Ending's the hardest part
of a sex life.
Like of a relationship.
Not for me, it's not. Okay, if you haven't done any exercise for a while, the most difficult part is starting and ending. Thank you very much, Mrs. M. And once you've done that, it's sometimes tough keeping going. You see, it's easy to end the jog around the block.
I think there's some distinction needed here.
There usually is if I'm having a conversation with somebody.
It's always difficult to start things that might seem like a chore.
Yes.
It's ridiculously easy to start things when they don't seem like a chore.
Well, that's not a pithy comment. That's an encyclopedia entry.
And it's also ridiculously easy to stop when you're doing a chore. And really hard to stop when you're really loving yourself.
When you're sorting out the books in the office here. Yes. I've noticed that, yes. Okay, I often struggle with motivation. So here's perhaps a motivational tip coming up. So I find and how did Mrs. T get on going to did you run her to the station?
Oh my God.
There were showering facilities. So I find other reasons to get out and walk, such as coffee. If you've managed your first gentle walk, add a couple of minutes each day. Explore your neighborhood, see what folks are up to. And if any of your neighbors are boring, you've got trainers on. You can just run off, can't you? Say, sorry, can't stop. Blow your whistle, as it were, and run off down the street. Waving. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. It's really just taking an interest in your surroundings, and you'll forget you're actually doing exercise. Try it. You might enjoy yourself. You're not going. She's shaking her head. It's going to have to be more than coffee and exploring the neighborhood for Mrs. M to get her trainers on, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd go for a walk. Wouldn't go for a jog.
All right, excellent news here. I'm gonna preface this with a blast of some of this. What are you poking the?
Does this need a sound?
Okay. Yeah, here we go. A great big parabéns. It is with great delight that we can report today, finally.
Wow.
What a happy day. The never-ending story of the elusive escritura is now over. These are the moments Antonio is involved in as well. The deed is done, literally. We're dancing the happy dance all the way to Porto today to hopefully find and buy a car. Great news, Baddy. We have been with you all this way on this journey, haven't we? And finally, the ink is drying on the paper and that house is yours. Great news. And good luck with buying a car today. Anyone got any tips about buying a car? I think cars are a little bit better value up there in the north. So well done going to Porto to select yourself a vehicle today. What have you got in mind? The fog hat slug is what I'm going to call him. Bom dia, Campos. Feliz terça todos. Tudo bem? From James this morning. Got some lovely photographs from you.
Hey, I sent you a photo yesterday of the Ancient Mariner.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't see that.
There's a rose called Ancient Mariner.
Oh, yes, there is a rose.
And I sent it because I thought you might want to share it at some point.
He may or may not want us to show his rose.
It's very beautiful.
On the screen. It is.
And our friend was...
What rose isn't beautiful?
Our friend was absolutely delighted to see her Ancient Mariner blooming in front of her.
All there for everybody to see. Yeah. An Ancient Mariner. Can you check your WhatsApp? Because I sent a message to you this morning, and it'd be great if you could let me know. Buddy, congratulations on signing the Escritura. And Bon de Alegria says, Pete, who's in this morning as well, a marvelous morning for me as I saw 2 red wild deer grazing on the land. They're such gentle creatures, aren't they?
Absolutely amazing.
It's just amazing. Yeah, watch out for their ticks, of course. Be very careful selecting a car. They're both expensive and full of rather shocking surprises. Is it like buying a Portuguese house then, where the boot is full of black bags full of stuff that you inherit as when you buy the car as well? You might get a Winky trophy in the boot.
You get some like unused masks and things.
Some unopened wine in there with no label on it. Some old masks. Anything else?
Maybe a lip balm, a comb, and a box of matches.
What have we had in houses? Pictures of Jesus?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. That's a good omen, though, to get a picture of Jesus in a framed print of Jesus in the boot.
Was it signed? Was it?
No, don't be. Who was it who told us that? Typical. As I've got friends visiting at the end of this week, the storms are coming. They might not, Weather forecasting is not that good, is it, these days? They've got the best technology available to them and probably the worst reputation these days. I don't think weather forecasting is that good.
No, because we were told to buckle up and get ready for storms.
And I was telling everyone about it.
Yeah,
and then it didn't happen.
We had 3 or 4 great sunny days.
I was walking down the street like the Grim Reaper, telling people, yes, be careful, storms are coming. Harr!
I mean, I changed my washing schedule. We had
changed my underwear, everything.
We had 3 or 4 great sunny days where I could have line dried everything.
Yes.
That opportunity went. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Don't worry, Darren. Who knows what's going to happen?
The delights of Portugal can be seen even in the storms.
Take them to the port sellers. They won't care what the weather's like, will they, as they stumble out of there? Bon dia, criaturas from Francis. Oh my goodness, look, so life has ramped up, so I'm going to excuse myself for most of the shows till we've moved. Keep in touch if there's anything we can do to help. Francis, do let us know. 4 weeks left, and we travel up country to visit family, so there's lots going on. Remember all of that, visiting family before you leave?
Yep.
Very interesting. Hope everyone is well. We're doing good here, and we've got everything crossed for you.
We can't wait to see you this side.
It'd be lovely to see you.
Where are you going, by the way? Which area?
Porto. He's a Porto. The Portugal son, a Porto boy.
Okay.
And Baddy, congratulations from Owen. Amazing video from Owen yesterday. Oh my goodness. I was looking at it on my phone. Did you trim that snake by mistake there, Owen? Can you let us know what happened there? It was an old snake skin. One of the kids thought, but it was very exciting nonetheless. So what exactly happened there? Ted Lasso talks. I must watch Ted Lasso. Heard good things about that. So there's Ted Talks, Ted X, Ted Y, and Ted Z, and now Ted Lasso.
What's Ted Lasso?
It's a Netflix series. And João will see us all soon at 9:30. Bairandi is here. Bon dia, going out for a ride on the motorbike later through the gorgeous Bairadian countryside. Good on you, mate. Good to see you here this morning, and I believe it is the pier. Pyromaniac.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going with phosphorus.
Well, I was thinking of phosphorus.
Isn't it a fiery element?
Isn't that to do with the light?
It's the fire that makes light then, or the light that makes fire. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And phosphorus, there you go, I think is glowing. He talks about how he follows the science. There he is. He's got the science for us this morning. Forest is glowing, and pier is fire, as in pyromaniac. We've got you here, James, let's show your beautiful photographs that we were talking about yesterday. And here they are, the Ericeira coastline. Let me take your comment off the screen so that we can enjoy those properly this morning. Oh, morning, Steve, as well. Steve Merwin is in. How you doing, Steve? You're going to be coming to a meetup to see us at some point. Look at that. Those beautiful white adobe walls almost are lovely there, aren't they? In Ericeira. Look at that, Mrs. M. We must go see that. Near Torres Vedras inland and Ericeira. This is a very interesting part of the world to get to. There's your nice sign there. Unguarded beach. This is unguarded beach. Like, is well, you could do losing a bit of weight with that bikini. That's an unguarded beach talking to you.
You're nuts.
There is a lovely path going down to the beach, the unguarded beach. Very beautiful. Not unlike Argralia up the road here. And look at that path. I love those white walled paths there down to the sea. And the fountain that made everyone need to go to the toilet the other day when you sent us the video was beautiful. Font de Saint Sebastian. Thank you very much for those, James. Excellent photographs. He used to be a photographer, you know, and a hairdresser and a psychotherapist. And I was thinking, who is this person who was a photographer, was a psychotherapist, and was a hairdresser? That's somebody who looks and listens a lot.
Yeah,
isn't
somebody
it?
who's
Somebody
observant.
looks and listens and is observant. Yeah, very good. Back to those comments then before we welcome the marvelous Antonio Barbosa. Yes, fascinated by people.
Yeah.
I Pairelio. This is people just trying to keep making me say it incorrectly, probably. Pairelio Forest sounds like it could be used as a nasty torture or execution device.
Yeah, in particular for the Winky.
John!
For the Winky statue or something.
You could weld the Winky statue back together if you got it up to a sufficient temperature. And then it would be kintsugi, a bit of kintsugi, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Around your Winky trophy. Thank you so much, James. For some reason, can't tag. Really appreciate it. Well, we're all rooting for you here. Well done, James, leading on that. Always great at making people feel welcome in the community here, James. It hasn't gone unnoticed. And busy on the canals today, just listening. Okay, and UBI has been extremely, that was an ancient miner who's busy on the canals today. UBI has been extremely successful in Africa, but only with monthly or weekly payments and not lump sums, which people tend to splurge on nonsense. It sounds like an old British lord talking from central Portugal. These people honestly splurging on nonsense. Just look at furlough and cryptocurrency. Hey, didn't Pete used to be a big advocate of crypto before? Hasn't got a good word to say about it now. So what's this, Pete? We need to stop people. We need to give people UBI, but not too much, and not in a way that helps them be profligate and foolish with their money. I don't know. Maybe a sermon. It needs to be handed out after church on Sunday when you've given them a very good talking to, not to buy cryptocurrency.
Pete just sounds like a dad.
Pete does sound a bit fatherly.
I know you are a dad. And no doubt you've had conversations with your kids about
as you've passed them their pocket money and told them not to splurge it on nonsense, which kids always do. They've got to learn, haven't they? It's just some people never grow out the habit, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, seeing our kids getting their money and knowing all the things they're interested in, and then seeing them want to buy a jelly straw, it's like, oh god,
yes,
something inside me kind of
that's right,
shuts down.
It's an interesting one. That's another topic for another time, isn't it? Teaching children the value of money. Possibly a quality many people never learn, really. And maybe that's something to do with the whole thing, the weirdness about money anyway. I mean, it's all made up, isn't it? And my interesting thought on, well, I think it's interesting anyway about UBI, is if everyone's being given money from the government, where is the money coming from? And presumably it's just being printed and given out. And if it can be printed and given out, why is it limited in any way? Is that so that the government can remain paternalistic? And how is there any other way of issuing money that isn't from a more and more centralized government? It just doesn't rest well with me.
Hasn't the US just been propped up with an extra 1 trillion or something?
Well, they've gone through the debt ceiling, haven't they? They've gone through the debt ceiling and they're coming back up through the basement. I think they've gone so far out.
What galls me, I know these people are, supposedly elected officials all around the world. But the fact,
like Rishi Sunak. Oh no, he's not.
But like the fact that people make these big decisions to just create money out of thin air, and yet if we were to create money out of thin air, we would be
go to prison.
We'd go to prison.
You'd be accused of starting a Ponzi scheme or cryptocurrency. Yes.
There's something not quite right about that.
There's something not quite right about this. Again, dun, dun, dun. Is there someone in Porto free today to view the car for me? Oh, okay. At the dealership. So it looks like Buddy needs a little bit of help with that. And this, the white wine is getting me in the back of the throat. Excuse me, hold on a minute. Goodness, Portuguese wine. What are you like? Okay. And are the friends' surnames Storm? He's making a joke about your friends coming to the Storm, and I think take him definitely to. Oh, if they're mechanics, Baddy could borrow them for a little while to look at cars, and also take them to the port sellers, and they'll be absolutely fine if there's a storm there. Darren.
Wow,
no
that
problem. What's up?
First half hour went so fast.
It flew by, and you very rightly say it's half an hour, and we're into the show, and it's time for some Tony time. Let's get ready to rumble. Hola, bon dia, Griep. How are you, Tony?
Bon dia. Hi, Mrs. M and Mr. M. How are you guys?
Do you know what? I quite like that bit of contrast there, Tony. That looks good like that, doesn't it? I think it shows us off in the best possible light like that. Or do we like it a little bit bluer? No, I think that darkness is good. Tony, you have been on a trade mission. You have been getting people excited, I think, about coming to Portugal, right?
I think so. I think people are excited to come to Portugal with me or without me. So I'm just a vehicle to, have the privilege to show them around, and it was great. What a great week, Carl.
What did you do? What did you do with these people, Tony? Who were they, and where did you take them? Could you give us a little bit of a replay on the tour?
Sure. They're realtors, professionals, investors, buyers, clients, friends. We call them friends from the U.S. and Canada. And we showed them the north of Portugal. Portugal is just not the Algarve and Lisbon and other points in between. Okay. The Minho is one of Portugal's best kept secrets. You've heard me say that many a time before. And so we started trip in Porto. And we were there for 2 days, visited some real estate opportunities, because that's what it's about, showing the culture, the people, the wine, why it is first that you should consider moving here, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, just some real estate developments. We went to the Douro Valley, beautiful Favaios, as a matter of fact. Everybody thinks of port wine, but there is a sherry there called Favaios in a small village. Yeah, and most people don't know. They only think of port wine. So there's a lot more to show than just port. And then the Minho region. What can I say? Everybody loved it, because then we also went to Spain, in Galicia, the southern region, Bayona, Vigo, La Guardia, and the whole region. Met with the city hall presidents. The cameras. Of course, it's part of there. And getting to know why you should consider the Minho region. They loved it. Everybody loved it, because nobody knew. No, people don't know what they don't know. They really don't. And they think that, and so it is so many opportunities here, but also the cost of living is cheaper. You see this view behind me. That's in Caminha. That's where the Minho River meets the Atlantic. It exactly here. Let me get out of the way.
Zooming in there. That's oh my word. That's so beautiful, isn't it? It's a delta. Possibly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you have Santa Tecla. There, we went up there. It's a viewing point. Caminha is there as well. And, this is where the Minho River, it kind of kisses it hugs and kisses Santa Tecla in Caminha before it hits the Atlantic. So that's just the way I put it.
Well, no wonder they want to travel around with you with descriptions like that, and treating them to a sherry that they wouldn't otherwise discover if not for being with you. And you said there, Tony, about people don't know what they don't know. And I suspect you discover things as well, right? Things you didn't know when you're talking to people from the US and Canada and their perceptions of Portugal. What did you learn this time? What are people saying? Is it slightly better known, or is it still pretty much a mystery to these real estate agents that are coming from America and Canada, United States and Canada?
Well, thanks to me, it's not a mystery anymore.
True.
Which is a good thing, but there's plenty of room for everybody, and it's still unknown. It's still lots of opportunities. There really are. Yeah. And, when you talk about the community, and you can have this anywhere in Portugal, really is. Portugal is based upon values and community. People, the grandparents help raise the grandkids, etc., in a nice little tight community. You have that all over Portugal. Up here in the north, you have it as well. What we have here, probably where nowhere else in Portugal has, is a more lush and green area. It rains more, right? And so it's going to be naturally. The green you see up here is not the same green in the Alentejo or the Algarve or even Coimbra, for that matter. It's a different green. It's a very lush green. The mountains, what you have here, the vineyards, right? People have their own little vineyard as well. like in the areas around Lisbon and Coimbra, everybody has their own little plantation, their vegetable garden, their little wine production for consumption. Here, lots of opportunities around the wine sector, the tourism. Lots of opportunities in the commercial end of it because it's undiscovered yet. And so it will be. You write it on a stone. In about 10, 15 years from now, what the Douro Valley was maybe 20, 30 years ago, this Minho region, when you have to do with lots of companies, hotels, I mean, we're talking big brands, Symington, for example. Symington invested a few million euros here in Monson, okay, in a hotel, a luxury hotel. And they're used to, in the Douro Valley, right? They're predominantly in the Douro Valley in the port wine, and they invested in the Alvarinho wine. And so that's just to give you an idea. Among others, we're talking multi-million euro investments in this region along the hotel
smart
sector,
money,
ennotourism, etc., logistics, senior care living, in addition to housing, so it's, and again, it's one of Portugal's best kept secrets, and so that's where people, little by little, they're getting to know it. And imagine like São Martinho do Porto, where you're at, I would say it was like the Algarve maybe 20, 30 years ago, right? Undiscovered, etc. Now the Algarve now it's being discovered little by little. Well, up here we're still a little bit behind, but people are discovering, thanks to me and a few other friends now, that they'll go back. And we're going to be planning doing a lot more here for this region, that's for sure, because it's one of those regions that needs to be promoted. And love to do it. It's my backyard. I'm very proud to call it home, and that's where I feel comfortable. And it's just like when you're going anywhere in the street, even I was with friends, our realtors, showing them around, that anywhere you go from the whole Minho region, there's always somebody you run into from wherever, every corner. And so it was phenomenal.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. Love me a cool cerveja com favaios. So the favaios sherry, that happens, that is as a chaser for a beer, or does it chucked in the beer? Like Portuguese sometimes like to chuck a martini into the beer, don't they? Do you drink it with or by the side of?
I drink it alone. I try not to mix up the things. I know the martini with beer is pretty. I mean, you got to have a sherry, you have a beer. I can have either one together, maybe not. But it is an appetizer. It could be an appetizer as well, more so than probably a after lunch. They even have a rosé spumante, natural sparkling wine as well. So it's a great farm there. It's Quinta da Vessada. It's in Favaios. They do a traditional. They bring out like the soup in this big traditional pot, iron cast, and the lunch. I mean, it's a beautiful farm to visit. And Favaios is the name of the town, and they come together as a like a cooperation, right? Like a wine.
The cooperatives, or the
And so what they do, each single plantation owner would take care of its own grapes. Some are bigger than others, but they do it as a collectiveness, and then they sell the brand, or the Favaios brand. It's only found there. And it's just like I said, there's a lot more to the Douro Valley than just the port wine, and people don't know what they don't know. And so we tried the port tonic. That's something that everybody discovered.
Yes.
Like, whoa, that's something. What, Carl? Everybody loves their gin tonic, but when I got him to try the Porto tonic, I said, Tony, what is this? This is good stuff. It's a lot easier, So for sure.
Sounds like you looked after them brilliantly. I think Mrs. M wants to ask you about
that. No, actually, I just wanted to say. Like, we don't really have the tradition of putting a spirit in beer, do we? But when I lived in France, Tony, they had this lovely sort of orangey liqueur called Picon, which would be put in the Pression, like the Imperial. So you'd get a lovely
extra
little
lead in your pencil.
Yeah, and like this strong orange liqueur going into their lovely light beers was just divine. Amazing. Really good. So I think there are some lovely sort of cultural. I just think adding anything into beer, like port, that just sounds great. Sounds wonderful. I'll leave you boys to it.
That gets a thumbs up from Miss
French. You can also have it's like a pomegranate. It's red, right? They call it like if you want to have a Shirley Temple. Grenadine. They also, because it adds a little bit of sweetness, or some people may put a little bit of 7-Up or something. It's just to give it a little bit of color. So the French definitely, I could see that, because. And even the Portuguese, they love to have it. I like my martini just straight on the rocks, or with a little lemon, or even just the Favaios itself or port. or Porto tonic, but definitely it's a great drink.
That is a great drink, and this kind of seems to be catching on as an alternative to the what's that really popular one with the rum? What's the not
Cuba
Caipirinha?
Libre? The Cuba Libre?
No, what the one with the sugar and the rum and lime in it, the very popular
the mojito.
Mojito, the party starter. I think the Portonico is definitely moving into that sort of territory around the world, isn't it?
Port and tonic. That sounds fantastic.
It certainly is.
What a terrible time to stop drinking.
Yeah, sorry about that. You can watch me.
Okay.
Mrs. M, I think Randy likes the occasional French liqueur or alcohol dropped into a pint from what I think he spent a lot of time in France, so he'll have experienced that as well. Excellent stuff. Well, now, what do these presidents of the cameras think, Tony, when you're bringing your busload of folks to see them? Because they must think, why would anybody want to come and see us? We're just living our lives here. That must be quite an interesting moment when you say to the president, I want to introduce all these people to you.
Yeah, it was one real funny moment was, I know, this one president of the City Hall of Valencia, Dominio, okay? I known him for more than 20 years since living here. It's a funny story because of a property we sold that when he was the mayor of another city hall next to this county. And I didn't tell him it was me. We organized it. He knew that he was receiving a group of, realtors, investors coming in to look at. And so he's looking at me. So tell me where you're from. And I asked him, says, look at me without the beard and 20 or 40 kilos more thinner. And he almost flipped out of his chair. He gave me a great big hug and says, I didn't know you were behind this and stuff. And so they love it because you know what it is? Governments, you got to realize something. There's not enough money to go around. And we even talked about creating low cost housing, okay, for the Portuguese, investments, okay, where the city halls, they have the land, they have older buildings, where we can get the private investors to do it and build to rent. So you have affordable rents, not necessarily for people for housing, right? Not necessarily people buying, where people can buy those and maybe putting limits on there for 15 years, not being able to sell or something like that, where it goes into affordable housing. Yes, you have a minimum return, 5 or 6%, but it's steady. Because people here think Portugal is all about, the rich and famous. And no, it's not for millionaires. Portugal is for everyone. You have it all. And when you get involved with these city halls and for lots of investments that involve private investors in the sector, they welcome it because you know what? They know fully well that they don't have the money. They may have a building, but they don't have the money to renovate it and maybe to make it for student housing, for example. There's universities, so you need for teachers, you need for students, you need for a growing population of immigrants that are coming in, you know what I mean, for working class. And so you need that affordable housing. So when you have these discussions with them about all the possibilities of growing the tourism sector, the eno-tourism, and we're going to have scheduled meetings again sometime during the week, in the next couple of weeks, because we want to explore these possibilities to really do something to grow the region. And that's what it's about. That's what real estate is. Real estate
makes such sense, Tony. And it's not that difficult, is it? We're having the same sort of conversation here as we have with Bobby O'Reilly, with Savikat Anna. This, the whole Mais Habitation thing, sorting out the housing problem for Portuguese people, kill the golden visa, make ALs more difficult, and they're getting involved in all this political long grass. What you just said there makes complete sense, doesn't it? The municipalities have the land. There are investors who want to invest in the country. They can see the sense of building affordable housing for people. If there's a lack of it, there's business in it, isn't there? And investors may well want to do that for a steady return. And all the conditions are right for doing it. And the only thing that seems to be missing with that is the vision and will for doing it. So you're breaking down that barrier, are you? And getting this sort of this vision into the local cameras. And are they up for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the AL licenses, there's not one president of the city hall up here where, that role, that responsibility is passed on to the city hall. And there's not one president of a city hall that would say, you know what, we welcome the AL licenses. We want people to come here. You got to think of this is an issue for over 30, 40 years, Carl. And I've been saying it all along that, it's not a problem now that there's shortage of housing in Lisbon and Porto. Why? Everybody's leaving the interior villages. If you come to the interior parts of Portugal, there's still a lot of space, a lot of land, a lot of things to do, right? Of course, Lisbon and Porto and the bigger cities, there's not enough room probably for everybody that if they want to go there, but not everybody wants to live there or invest, And when you have small investors that are they care about what's going on in the world, where they have a modest return. I mean, let's face it, we're living in a capitalist world. Don't take me by nobody is Mother Teresa. Everybody's putting your money there and your investment there, right? Okay, and so they're putting their investment there, but they want a simple return, steady return, where they can get a 6% return instead of doing buying it. Because if somebody has to buy the land, they have to pay full premium price, a developer, correct? If they have these partnerships with the city halls where they put a mandate on there for 15 years, okay, nobody could sell them. It's going to be, and it has to be for lower income or lower income housing. And you got to meet certain criteria because, just have that affordable rentals. And there is a market for that. And there's a market for so much more. And when you have the support from the city hall, the mayors, they look at it like this is not Lisbon or Porto or bigger cities. We're talking about small cities that have maybe 10,000 people, 8,000 people. And so making a difference. And when you have an influx of people moving in, immigrants, from Brazil, from India, Bangladesh, wherever, all over in the world, right? They're moving in because the opportunities, because there's plenty of jobs available. And there's not low income housing. It's evidently they're not going to pay €1,000 a month for a luxury apartment. That just doesn't go, right? They're not even making that. So you got to have, like a 1-bedroom apartment, something like around €275 or less than €300 a month. A 2-bedroom, you set certain things. We were talking about all these opportunities and really way to go because it's the only way. I mean, for me, I'm worried about my little backyard. You can't change the world, but I can change the world around me, as we always say. Right?
Yeah, and, that's fantastic. I love it, Tony. And this vision is so important for the future of this country, I think. What strikes me is it's not that difficult an idea to get your head around, is it? And I suppose people are just set in their ways, habitual, and it hasn't been like that, so we're not going to start doing it now. But it makes so much sense to have that interest from inward investors who want a nice steady return, nothing too risky. And there's clearly a need. There is so obviously a need. The government were working on this idea, but perhaps from the wrong angle. There's very much a need for affordable housing all over Portugal. And with more people coming, they're not all golden visa investors, are there? There are people coming who want, like you say, who want to work here and need somewhere good value to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many. This is a phenomenon, Carl. When we think about but if you think it's expensive here and what's going on in Portugal, we're not obsolete. What's going on in the rest of the world? We're all interconnected. What happens here happened out elsewhere a while back. It's just not here. What happens is that right now Portugal is definitely on the maps. People are looking at it. Affordable. It's affordable. Cheap? No, cheap is not the word. And it's still extremely affordable. Maybe even for a Portuguese, it's become maybe unsustainable for somebody living in a big city, buying a house or renting, etc. Yes, in the bigger cities. But if you go around the central parts of Portugal, the more obsolete, more interior-wise, even up here in the Minho, even in the Alentejo regions, away from the coastline, away from the buzzy where the tourists, everybody wants to be at the same place. They want the view to the ocean. They want the quality luxury, and they don't want to pay for it. That's normal. You know what? That's fine. We don't waste time with that because it just doesn't exist. But there is an option for people that want to come to live in Guarda, okay, in Viseu. They don't mind working. I mean, I remember immigrants when my parents immigrated, like most people immigrate. When you immigrate to a different country, they're worried about the safety, education, putting a little money together, saving, etc. Yeah. How do you think people do it when they migrate to other countries? You know what? People that are going to be coming to work here, they're not necessarily going to be living or working, in the best in the tech fields, etc. Those are jobs that even Portuguese, but normal remedial jobs. People going to be living here, working, getting a better life here, living in Portugal. You got to have homes for them, of course, and it's going to happen because you know what? I believe that always that some changes will have to be made, and it has to go through the private sector, private investment. We don't have here a culture of building to rent. We don't have that. It's unfortunate. You have that culture in many other countries in the world where they build affordable housing to be able to.
Why is that, Tony? Why is that? Because is that kind of a revolutionary sort of a residual revolutionary thing that the houses were provided for people in the dictatorship, but that kind of broke down and the supply just ended since the 70s. What happened there? Why is there not a build to rent culture in Portugal, do you think?
Capitalism.
Okay, you took it off in a different direction after the political change.
It really is. It's hard to find. It's hard to find to buy a piece of land. A developer, it makes sense. A developer. That's why it has to go through the city hall. It has to go through the commodores. It has to go through the government. They're the ones that the owners of the most empty buildings. Okay, they are.
It's so true. They're trying to figure out schemes, aren't they, to pull property back from
they're
private
the owners
owners.
of those empty buildings.
They're the owners of the empty buildings. Yeah.
And the land. And what they need to do is make partnerships with these private entities, okay, where they're going to say, okay, 15 years, you could build it, but you can't sell it. It's build to rent, okay? You're going to have that modest return, and that's fine. You know what I mean? There's people that are going to willing to do that. But the government has to open that up. And what that's going to happen, because if a developer pays premium price for land, what does he want to do? Carl, he's going to want to get the maximum return. And even, he's paying, like 3 times as much because land is very expensive to build. And so it's just not possible. So I say it's capitalism because people, they're some are more greedier than others, of course. And, and that's fine. But that's a capitalism. I have nothing wrong with that. If people are willing to pay for it, who am I to say it's not worth that? That's the thing. People are willing. You say, it's not worth 500,000. Well, if people are paying that, then I guess it is worth it, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Right. I want to ask you a couple more things, perhaps sort of a lighter-hearted content here about cocktails, because Pete needs some help with some unusual cocktail ideas. But before we go there, were you not taking a bit of a risk taking your trade mission people to Spain, or are you certain that they're not going to want to settle in Spain anyway?
No, you know what? I was just in Spain yesterday. I'm going to be going there today. I'll be going there tomorrow for a birthday party. Right. I go there like every other day, or if not every day, just for a small drink or wine or whatever, or pour petrol. Now people, there's a very, it's a micro economy. Because the Spanish, the Spanish come to Portugal and the Portuguese go there, and it's, living here is a lot cheaper. It really is. And that's why a lot more Spanish do come here, because of the food, because of the people, everything. And so the Portuguese go there. You know why I think the Portuguese go there? So that nobody knows them. They want to run away from their neighbors that have the holiday homes here in the beach areas. They don't want to be bothered by them. So they go away where nobody knows them. But it really is. I think, Spanish incursion was, we built up these fortress years ago. Now it's encouraged, and that's where you see.
So they've got the message.
No risk.
Having people's heads turned by taking them over to Spain. I mean, I was going to say legend has it, but I mean, people's the view, I think, is that it's actually easier to settle in Portugal than it is in Spain. People that have been settling in Spain for a very long time. A lot of Brits love to go to Spain, of course, but not such good news you hear from Brits with holiday homes or homes in Spain anymore. Certainly, I think the money's on Portugal for being the most attractive place to be still, right?
Yeah, one of the biggest concerns, think about this, okay, and that's probably what makes a difference. But one, the residency status in Spain is a lot longer. It's almost 10 years, right, for you to attain residency, okay, and becoming a citizen. Portugal is half that amount.
Right.
The cost of living is a lot cheaper here, without a doubt. I mean, I go to, I could pay for a cup of coffee here in Valência do Minho, and I can go over for 80 cents, and I can go over to the nearby. I just have to cross a bridge a kilometer away, and that same cup of coffee costs €1.50, almost double,
wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just things to start with. It's a different culture. One of the most important things, and I think this is probably where people realize, is the inheritance taxes. If we have high taxes here, they have high taxes, but we don't have an inheritance tax in Portugal. So a lot of people buying homes, they think about where they're going to leave the homes to, and how much taxes are my children going to pay, or my grandchildren going to pay. So inheritance tax is something to think about. If anything, that itself, and then you have, I think Spain really, although elections now were done a couple of weeks ago, and these things they were really radical. Where if you had the house empty, somebody can occupy it, right? There's actually a movement called Ocupas, and that where they occupy the house, you can't get them out there. Here in Portugal, if somebody occupies your house, you'll be there. Hey, there's a shotgun pointed at your head. Get the hell out. You know what I mean? Forget about the police. Forget about the dog. You worry about me. You know what I mean? Like, and,
yes. Okay. Well, no, I think that was probably enough to put people off Spain then. that little insight into things that are going over there. Before we say goodbye to you this morning, and before you pop off to Spain, it'd be nice if you share a few moments with João de Norte on the screen as fellow lovers of northern Portugal. But have we got any advice for Pete here, Tony? Enjoyed Tony time as ever this month. I am officially running the cocktail stand at the Orca Festa, which is over sort of Fundão way, central Portugal. First week in August. Put that in your diary, folks. I would appreciate any unusual cocktail suggestions, guys. Victoria straight in. Oh, a caipirinha, she says, or a cachaça. And a clara, apparently, is a great summertime libation. Equal parts lemonade and beer. That's a shandy, isn't it? About 2% alcohol. That's a nice thirst quencher. Probably not a cocktail in the way that Pete's talking about. Oh, you've also got the tango for us, the grenadine in beer, a lovely seaside at sunset. What's your favorite cocktail, Tony?
Now Porto Tonic, really.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So that's what you would go in with. Definitely. Yeah. Tell us how to make the perfect one of those then. What does Pete need to do? Which kind of port are you using in a Porto Tonico?
The cheapest white. Use white. Okay, use white. Right. And you can add, what I would do is add berries, like strawberries, blueberries, wild berries.
Oh,
and
very nice.
Mint, a leaf of mint tea, but smack it. You put the mint in your hand and you have to smack it.
To bring the fragrance out, yeah. Okay.
Exactly. With mint, you got to have it. And then tonic, normal tonic, nothing elaborate. Believe me, the cheapest port that you could find for like €2 a bottle or something in a supermarket will work just fine. I would probably invest in a little more of a better tonic, like a premium tonic but even the normal one. It's the best. Simple, and you won't go wrong. I saw there the clara. That's with the beer and a little bit of 7-Up, the lemonade. That's also very refreshing.
Shandy,
like the shandy.
Yeah, shandy. All right, John's got a suggestion as well. So let's give him a nice big round of applause and bring him onto the screen. João de Norte. Hold on a minute. I need to sort me and Tony out. We've just been obscured by the graphics here. That's not a good condition to be in. Good morning to you, John. How are you?
Good morning. Bom dia.
Bon dia. Good to see you here. You had a suggestion as well, right?
Yeah.
Pam's, I think. What's yours?
Well, this is one that Pam and Owen created just on a whim, but they both like port and Vinho Verde and 7-Up. So put the three together, and they think it's quite nice.
Vinho Verde in the mix there as well. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
I don't know what the portions are, but 7-Up or Sprite, port, and Vinho Verde.
Well, you probably get a lot of fun, just trying the different proportions of that, don't you? No. The next one, let's have a little bit less Vinho Verde and a bit more port in that. Excellent. So there you go, Pete. We've got you started there. With your cocktail stand, you're going to be a very popular guy there. Yeah, and Gemini's saying that, Clara, it is a shandy. That's right. Before you go, Tony, look at this route that John has been on recently. You'll recognize a few places on here, right? I think you'll have been to each and every one of these. John, what's this? Is this a recent road trip you've been on?
Yeah, this was this weekend with Bob and Viv.
Yeah.
So we wanted to explore a little bit with a Celtic ruin that we had read about that was up in Agarda on the northern side of the Minho. And so we decided to add a little lunch stop at just south of what's the name of it? Ancora, at a really nice seafood restaurant. Tony, you've probably been there. It's called Camarão.
Oh, is this one you described as the best seafood restaurant you've been to?
Actually, this one's better.
Oh wow, okay, that's been knocked off its perch already. Wow, okay.
Yeah, the other one is really good, and it's right on the coast, but it doesn't have a view. Right. This one is right on the coast. I don't know if you can pull it up there, Carl, to show the pictures, but it's Camarao, right near Ancora, and the pictures will explain the loveliness of it. So it's right on the coast with amazing views, with amazing seafood, and they open on most days for lunch from 12 to 3. and then of course do the normal dinner hour of 7 to whatever. So we had stopped there and made reservations for lunch. And a lot of places, are sort of, you don't have that many people for lunch, but this is a place where you need to make a reservation for lunch on a weekday. Oh, no, actually, this was Sunday. But anyway, we were the first ones because we had a reservation for 4 at 12:30. And well, I guess there were a few other people, but by the time we were done with our meal, boy, it was just packed.
It's an early start in Portugal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds like a fantastic Sunday afternoon. Do you know this place, Tony? The Camarão?
Yeah. That's in Vila Praia. That's in
I
Vila Praia.
I don't know if you
Goose barnacles. Goose barnacles.
Yeah, you have
if
the
you go
razor
to the
clam.
Google, if you pull up the Google site, you'll see the outdoor setting as well.
Okay. Well, I think
this isn't what I'm familiar with.
Oh my goodness! But that lovely pot of seafood stew and arroz de marisco there, and a decent pudding as well. Yeah, I'll come back to the outdoor pics on that.
Is this their actual website?
Amazing. What?
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
That's their TripAdvisor. It's always a bit risky going to TripAdvisor, isn't it? On this little circuit here, what else might have you suggested here, Tony? On this little road trip here, have they covered everything? Do you think
this is
your territory? Isn't it? You talked about your backyard, Tony. This really is you, isn't it? Viana do Castelo.
La Guardia is definitely a great place to visit because it's just over. Well, you could take the ferry, but if you drive into Vila Nova de Cerveira, take the bridge over. It's a really beautiful viewing point. On a nice clear day, you could see as far as the Povo de Varzim, etc. To the long coast of the Portuguese coastal.
Really?
And if you go, even if you go just a little further up to Bayona, it's a beautiful coast ride, or come back around. One of the places there definitely I would highlight is Moledo do Minho, which is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful beach. That's pretty much the view that you see here in Caminha. That's where the Pinhal do Camarido starts, right, with the forest. On the other side of the river is La Guardia. And so that's the viewing point from Caminha, which is beautiful. One place definitely I would recommend to eat is one of the best restaurants, seafood. All they have is fish and seafood. They have no meat on the menu. And it's Tasca da Linda in Viana do Castelo. Right. It's a Michelin star restaurant. And so definitely, but value and price is there. And the service, it's exquisite. There's other small little places. We had lunch yesterday on Sunday with a friend of mine in Vila Nova de Cerveira, a nice seafood restaurant as well. So you have like a nice seafood dish. So there's so many great places. There really are, Carl. And John, I'm happy that you went and you discovered it because it is something really to see. It's really great.
It's ongoing, isn't it? Tony, thank you so much.
Best in my definition for seafood is one that meets my preferences as opposed to just the food and everything. So it has to have the right ambiance, the right view, the right price, with not being too expensive, as well as the food. So the Camarão, I thought, ticked off most of those because I could get lobster there, which is another one. That's a fourth one. And it had really terrific views and good service, and the prices were reasonable too. So that was good. And pleasant, friendly service.
Excellent stuff. Right, Tony, thank you so much for being here. If you want to find Tony and have him help you in the north of Portugal, go to Infinite-Solutions. Have a great day. Always love our Tony time here. Cheers, Tony. Take care. And ciao for now. Cheers, mate. There goes Tony Barbosa. A lovely bit of Tony time this morning. Find him if you want some help up in the north, infinite-solutions.pt. And maybe you might have an American or Canadian real estate agents in the United States or in Canada who might like to join Tony on one of his trade missions. It sounds like a lot of fun for everyone involved, including the president of the local Camarão, when everyone rocks up with Tony and bottles of sherry in hand and off to the next fantastic feature of the Minho region there. And I'm sure he's right. that they will talk about Antonio Barbosa in years to come as the guy who popularized the Minho region, an area which you're loving, John. Is that still continuing, the ongoing, unfolding love affair with the north of Portugal? How is that?
Yeah, and so I hope to add my little contribution to the Minho region as well. So if you bring that map up again, I'll kind of continue the.
Let's go on this. Continue on this tour. Yes, please. There we go.
So we've been to Vienna on many occasions, and there's a Celtic ruin down there too, which is also on the north side, on top of a hill overlooking the confluence there of the Lima River. So after we went up to Ancora and had our lunch, we continued on to Caminha, which is right on the south bank of the Minho River. And as Tony said, just up from there, there's a ferry that you can take across, but it was closed. So I don't know the schedule of when it's open or what, but they said, no, it's closed. So we continued on to, as you can see in the map there, Vila Nova de Cerveira, and crossed over the bridge, and then went back down through the coast of Spain. And it's just all of that is just a really beautiful drive through the country. And then you come up to the village and town of Agarda or Lagarda, depending on Spanish or Portuguese.
All right.
And it's right up on top of a high hill overlooking the Minho. If you recall the background of Tony's that that you were seeing, that was the Minho in the background, of course, and he is essentially standing on the south bank. You're looking across the river to the opening of the mouth of the river, and the hill that was over his left shoulder, it is the hillside that the Celtic ruins are on. So it's right at the top.
Okay. Can we have a look at those then? Because that was amazing. And the restoration was superb as well, wasn't it, with this particular archaeological or historical site? There you are, of course, the party that went out on Sunday, you and Pam, and the legendary Bob and Viv as well. And that's a nice view. This is a beautiful view because you've got the immediate, the foreground of the old Celtic settlement there, and then beyond that there is the town beneath in the valley, isn't there, which gives you another really great clue as to how the Celtic people would have lived there, with that lovely valley view, maybe looking across to another Celtic settlement on the other side of the valley. But this was a very sensitive restoration, John, right?
Yeah, this is a restoration of what is believed to have been a typical house there. So they have these, what you would call, I don't know, a veranda or a porch or something. And they even have a little oven on the side there, so you can have a barbecue.
Oh, really? Early Portuguese outdoor cooking.
Yeah. So, of course, this would have been, what would it have been? It was just Iberian cooking at that time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and inside's quite roomy. They even have a sort of a second story in there, with like a wooden loft that's built up where you have your sleeping area, and so it really was quite nice. There's little holes in the opening there, so it looks like there would have been some kind of a wooden gate that would have swung open, and same thing with the
self-contained.
Same thing with the doorway. It looked like there would be a place for some kind of rudimentary hinges for having doors and stuff. So it's really quite comfortable, if you ask me.
And what's the date of these then? When did they think people were living here in this way?
Oh, these go back. Well, not necessarily these themselves. I apologize. I don't know the exact dates of these. But the museum, which is at the top, has all kinds of Celtic artifacts from the area, many of which date back to like Stonehenge days or the Neolithic period. So that's like 3000 BC. So
it's amazing.
5,000 years of history.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And a plan view there, which shows the proximity in which people lived, and that makes sense, doesn't it? From a security and possibly, temperature, climate control point of view, that you live in this way, all sort of nestled together on the hills. And you've got to get.
There were settlements here even during Roman times when the Romans first came through. And this particular area, they say at its maximum had 4,000 to 5,000 persons living here.
Really?
Yeah, agricultural. They controlled the trade routes because it's right there. Actually, what you're looking at in the background, that's the ocean. And then behind you is the Minho. So it's right on the hill overlooking the ocean and the Minho. And it's surrounded by a wall as well. So once the Romans came in, they preferred, of course, travel and trade down in the valley floors where they built their roads and things. So it kind of led to the diminishment of these settlements and things. So how
fascinating is that, John? Along come the Romans and say, well, it's all very well living up there on the hills. You guys are in a constant state of war and alert, looking down on potential, enemies and so on. Why not come down into the valley? Why not live a more civilized life? We've got these roads, we've got villas, and we've got a place where you can have a bath.
Exactly.
No, we're not having any of that. You Romans coming over here for your long roads. What an amazing time in history! What an amazing time in history that would have been. Absolutely. I see. You're not a patch on the things we were talking about yesterday, right? With our Portugal immigrant network, a totally different mixture of cultures and questions about the time. Amazing. I
wonder what the Roman political viewpoint would have been on immigration, and would they call themselves expats if they were living in Gaul? Or
I think they would have just said, "You can just call me the boss."
Yeah, no, I'm Roman, and you're.
We own this. We now own this place. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, where are your taxes? Yeah, I guess that it would have been something a little bit like that. And I wonder, universal basic income in the Roman times. Wow, we'll have that conversation after 10 this morning. An excellent contribution about that from a blogger in our community on universal basic income. I know you've got a few ideas on that, so we might talk about that today as well. Here's going back to your shrimp restaurant, which is what it's called, of course, literally, isn't it? Camarão does mean shrimp.
Prawns, shrimp.
And that is your beautiful view there, looking out to the sea. A nice, a sort of modern-looking restaurant, and yet that's what you can get to see, is it? When you're eating,
it's right there. And they have indoor seating, of course, with nice linen service, but you have outdoor as well, outdoor seating.
As you were there, and I see. I do like to see a little road sign like this telling you where you are in the world. So just 95 kilometers away from Porto. If you are visiting Porto and you'd like a little trip to the seaside, only 95 kilometers away, and pretty handy for the Santiago de Compostela as well. 165 kilometers away there. Portugal's own Caminha, just 8 kilometers down the road. Now that's something you'll have been getting used to as well. You pretty much live on the Caminha, don't you? Where you are.
Yeah, our house is literally steps away from the Camino Santiago.
And is the traffic heavy at the moment? I mean, when we came to see you, it was pretty popular. There were people walking up and down there, weren't there? Is it the season now?
There's always some people walking up and down. And from what I can tell, I would say half of them are Portuguese. So it's not like
really?
There's a lot of local pilgrims on the road. I would say it's not heavy, but they're definitely there. So when I pull out, to get onto the road to the Caminha, because that's how I have to get out of my little housing area. So to get out onto the Caminha, half the time it's going to be a bicycle or a motorcycle or a car or a walker. So you always have to kind of keep an eye out. So because it's hard to see. I can't ever just sort of come to the little intersection and then go. I have to inch my nose out a little bit further.
Well, because there's going to be a tractor, a bicycle, and a bunch of walkers coming down there on the pilgrimage.
And you can't tell the speed because you're going to have a walker coming across, or then you have some guy that says,
Yes.
his bike or his motorbike.
It's absolutely lovely where you live there. So all of village life is there, and the pilgrims coming through. And there's something lovely, I think, about the pilgrim mindset, isn't there? That when you're talking to people who are on the pilgrimage, their hearts and minds seem to be open, don't they? It's a kind of, they're on a quest of some sort, aren't they? They are contemplating. And it's a pilgrimage not just of the body walking the street, it's of the mind and spirit or soul, you might say, as well. Have you had any interesting conversations with people coming through there?
I haven't. I apologize. I've said Boa Camina to people, but I haven't just stopped and say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
What are you doing in my garden?
How's your Camina? Yeah. So.
Is that the customary greeting then, to just wish them a good way?
Yeah. It's the customary greeting when you're saying hello to a pilgrim, is just say Boa Camina.
Wow, that's lovely, isn't it? Fantastic. Okay, and have you got any plans to join them? Are you going to walk from your house along the way and a little bit as well? Or is that not your thing?
No, not really my thing. But if I was to do it, it would be from my house. Yeah, I would go from my house to up
down the road to the cafe. In many ways, when you go to the shops, you are walking the Camino, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I've walked it dozens of times.
Yes.
Just a few kilometers.
Right, down to the cafe and back. Now, not far from your house, lovely picture from Owen, which I think you took. This is also you're the photographer here, aren't you?
I am.
And this is what Tony's talking about, isn't it? This is the lifestyle that's enjoyable up in the north of Portugal. So a bit of trout fishing going on there.
Yeah, we have brown trout, and we have the salmon run going on right now. So. Yeah, we were seeing just hundreds of salmon coming upstream. Easily what I have to do 2 feet. So what is that? 60 centimeters.
Yeah. Well, that's the size of the salmon. They're coming. They are going up to breed at the top of the river.
A lot of them, yeah. And so they didn't seem too interested in feeding, though. They're more on a mission to get up the river.
Procreate, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not skilled enough at this point to figure out what they would be interested in biting on.
Right.
But even if they did, I doubt I would be successful because my rod and reel, I have like 10-pound test line on it, and that's not the weight of the fish that you're catching. That's the weight of the drag, and so a 2-foot salmon is going to put like easily 50 pounds of weight on that in terms of a drag. So I was like, that would be very, very, very difficult to pull in a big salmon. I'd have to let it run and get exhausted before trying to reel it in. And I'm not I used to always fish, catch and eat. But the last 10 years or so, I'm more of a catch and release. So, catching a salmon and virtually exhausting it so that it would, die of exhaustion. I don't want to do that. So, so that wouldn't be so good. So I have to figure out what to do on that. Yeah.
But just seeing him in the water must be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. But in this case, if I did catch it, I probably would eat it.
Okay, to be done. But I think they outsmarted the pair of you on this particular day, though, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know if they outsmarted us or just were completely disinterested.
Right. Okay. That is such a lovely view. Absolutely brilliant to go on this little tour with you as well, John, this morning. What other highlights are on here? Tui, what's that about then? That's an unusual name, isn't it? Tui.
Yeah, Tui is actually just on the opposite bank of the Minho from Valença. Right. So on this little loop, if you will, after visiting the Celtic ruin and then going back, we just went back up across the bridge and then back along the coastal road to the A3 and just went the fast road home. But just at that apex where you see the turn back down south. If you went north there, then that would be Valença, and then Tui is right there. So you can easily spend a day in either village, looking at the history and the battlements and the fortress. In Valença, there's a lovely castle wall, kind of almost like Obidos.
Oh yes,
not quite as big and fancy as that, but the same kind of concept where you have the castle walls, and then inside the castle walls you have the shops and the stores and things like that. So it's actually a great place to buy linens, pillows, and blankets and things like that.
Oh, and you're getting this lie of the land then, the best places to buy different things. I mean, you don't actually have to leave Ponte De Lima, do you? Because every other Monday, there's a massive market there, and all of the world comes to Ponte De Lima. But there are these specialty places all around as well, are there, up here in this Minya region?
Yeah, I mean, there is the market and everything, but you're not necessarily getting the same kind of quality, or maybe the same kind of variety. And so Valença is pretty well known, and Tui actually, for furniture and linens. So there's a lot of good things you can get up there.
Can't wait to get back up there. It will, of course, be on one of our Discovery weekend tours, being up there, probably based in Ponte De Lima. But we're open to other hosting and sort of guesting ideas, and we just want to take in as much of the local area as we can on the second weekend of every month, starting in September. A different Portuguese town or city, and the Gumpers meeting up and having a great time, just as we did. It was a prototype, John, really, when we met you, and you so beautifully hosted us in Ponte De Lima. We had a beautiful weekend there. And thank you for sharing this road trip with us today. Talking of salmon and catching and cooking salmon, a little bit of news here, apparently. The disposable instant grill does not come with that food, they apparently, in it. A customer complained here from, I think probably from Twitter. Customer complained that when they opened their barbecue, the food wasn't there. When I said the picture was just an indication of what you can cook on it, she said she had 4 more at home in the freezer, ready to open and cook and have that delightful food.
She bought 4 of the barbecues, thinking they were like ready to make
yes,
TV
and
dinners.
They were in they were in the freezer awaiting combustion. Now, what she needed, that particular customer who thought the disposable instant grill came with all of that, was one of these. Did you have any better luck than me, John, on how to pronounce this thing here? Owen very kindly has sent us this. It's an amazing looking device. Well, it's the thing we were talking about earlier on, the Quem Sabia.
Oh, that's the medieval torture device.
Well, that's how you saw it, John. Others might catch a salmon and put it in the right place underneath it and have their lunch
and incinerate it.
Incinerate it. Do not cook your food Jetson style at midday. You probably want to be waiting till later on in the afternoon as the sun cools a little bit. But that's the thing. Thank you very much, Owen, for sending that in. And that is the picture of, what is it? Oh, the Pyrelia Forest, I think we'll go with.
Pyrelia Forest.
I think so, yeah. And just, John, finally then, thank you so much for joining us. Love a bit of Tony time. And when João de Norte talks to us about his love and passion for the north of Portugal. Actually, before we move on to UBI, you, of course, will be creating, I think, publishing blogs and videos about your love of the north of Portugal. How's that going at the moment?
I think working on the general format, if you will. So I think things like what we did, like last month, I think we did one where I took you into the Garesh and told you about a cafe up there and things and some waterfalls. So I'll just basically take you along on some little exploration adventures that we have as we explore different bits. So if you bring that map up real briefly, I'll say I think next month. If you look right smack dab in the middle of that, there's a big mountain range there.
Yes,
and there's a sanctuary or a pilgrimage spot called the Sanctuary de São João. Yeah. And so there's roads that go up to the top of the ridgeline up there. So I'll show that. And then over to the right, can't see it quite in this picture, but over to the right further, you pretty much run into Spain on that side, and where the Gresh meets España. And so I kind of want to explore that region of the Minho, because it's basically the far northeast of the tip of Portugal. So if you look at a map of Portugal, you kind of have this little crown, and then it dips down a bit, and then it comes. So it's that corner bit of the north that I'm curious about.
Very good. So we can look forward to finding out more about that with you and on your monthly visit here, and publishing those separately. What, you'll be blogging and videoing, will you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a skillful blogger or anything. At this point, it's mostly what I'm doing with you, but I don't have necessarily a website or anything like that.
Well, we're very grateful to you for doing this. Absolutely brilliant. Dougie's saying, apparently, stressed salmon, not so great. As you'd imagine, right? Is it true that a stressed salmon is inferior to eating one that hasn't been stressed? So probably net catching might be better than playing them out on a line, possibly there. Dougie, thank you very much for that comment. What we haven't talked about, John, is your wonderful Northern European tour. The highlight for me of which was you being piped in and out of a port in Scotland. We've not spoken, have we, since you've been on your trip?
No. Yeah. I thought that was really moving.
Me too.
It's like, that was in the port right near, it was our anchorage, right? Well, actually we were at a dock right near Inverness. So right at the mouth of the river there. And it's typical Scottish weather when we left, and this pipe and drum group came to bid us farewell, and it was pouring rain, and those poor guys, but they were just, it was really good.
I found it very moving, John, and Nikki and Norman, who joined us on the Good Morning Portugal Wine Club tasting last night, they ran away recently to Gretna Green to get married. And they had a piper. What happens if you go to Gretna Green? You can arrange it so that the piper, the bagpipes start up to herald the arrival of the bride into the room. And I said, did you guys manage to hold it together when the bride was being piped into the ceremony room? And she said, no, she completely lost it. And you'd expect them to, wouldn't you? Yeah. So she was completely in tears with the sound of the bagpipes as she was, coming forward to be wed to Norman. He saw her and heard the pipes, and he lost it as well. It's just, talk about opening up your heart. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing sound, isn't it? The bagpipes alone. But I guess you had the drums as well, and the whole thing going on there. And just seeing your video of it, I found very moving.
Yeah, I don't know if you have it handy, but they played a number of different pieces, and then as we were departing, they played Scotland the Brave. I don't know if they were taking requests, but I was out in my balcony saying, "Play Scotland the Brave."
You shouting through the porthole.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a veranda. No, we have no portholes.
I'm so sorry.
In steerage.
You weren't playing poker with what's his name downstairs.
Yeah, down with Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's right. You weren't drawing any French girls. You were out there on the veranda. Yeah. Fantastic, John. Yeah. And this UBI thing. Then we'll talk about this in the Iberian FM phone in a minute. I've got a great blog piece to read it out about it. It's a reflection on UBI. You might have a comment on this. You were talking a little bit about money supply. And of course, the United States have just burst through the debt ceiling. And I was saying they've gone so far out the debt ceiling, they're coming back in through the basement, aren't they, at some point? What do you make of this UBI thing in the American economy? It just keeps going, doesn't it? They just keep printing more and more money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of it.
I couldn't draw you there. Okay, fair enough.
I liked your comment about somebody being a dad, and it's like, yeah, you could give your growing children, an allowance of €100 a week or something, but I don't think they'd be spending it that wisely.
It's true. Yeah. Some do, some don't. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to teach a person how to use and value something like money. It's not just, for candy and what was it, strawberry straws or something.
The gummy bear acid straws. Yeah, Mrs.
Yeah.
Mem keeps sending me not to buy those, but I just can't help it, John.
Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion some months back about money and where it came from, or how it came about and what its definitions are. But basically, it's a medium of change and a unit of storage of value, and so there's a number of different things that can affect that and can affect its value. So if there's all of a sudden a unlimited supply of it, it no longer has the same value, becomes devalued. And so same thing with, you give a lot of something to somebody that is something that's supposed to be valuable. Well, to that person, it no longer becomes valuable because it's plentiful.
And is that how you see UBI going potentially? Is if you just
no, not necessarily. I'm just saying it depends on how it's done, right? Somebody was saying, in smaller increments, like you don't just simply give, a huge lump sum to somebody. In the U.S. presently, there's big discussions about reparations, and I'm not going to go into the sides of that, but when you're talking about, we want $52 trillion and we want every person to get 11 million, and just it's like
just to put this right,
not going to work. You're talking about blah blah blah. You're not actually talking reality, and so if we're talking UBI in a way that would be actually workable, sustainable, and not abused, and something that can allow somebody to gain dignity and a means of a transition to finding good employment, then by all means. But maybe it would be in small increments, weekly, on a way that where they're taught how to budget and how to save and given basic lessons on financial literacy and things like that. But if you just say, okay, right, we're just going to give them a shovel load of cash and just say, have a good time. Well, that doesn't solve anything.
It probably doesn't, does it? Again, what it might solve, I guess, would be very temporary, and it's without context. I suppose that's the point here, isn't it? If you don't create a context in which these systems might make sense, you could end up with an unholy situations, I guess, as well. And I would question the motives. These things will inevitably come through governments, won't they? And governments have their own motives for giving people money usually as well, don't they? So there will be that aspect to it as well. I don't suppose the government have any incentive in teaching people how to be financially literate, do they? For one,
they don't really have an incentive to teach people to be independent and no longer in need of the government. Then that kind of defeats the purpose of being the government. Because the whole point of government is to maintain power and control.
Govern. It's in the name, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you give people the ability to no longer need you, then that might be the way of proper parenting. That's what we want to do. We want to teach our children to not need us.
Yes.
But if our goal as a parent is to maintain control of your child and for their entire life and make them dependent on you, well, then you parent in a different way.
Very interesting to use those analogies there of paternalistic and maternalistic models of government. Look, by Randy, always appreciate João de Norte's view on all things. How about that's a great review and validation this morning, isn't it? And James is saying it's the old give a fish, teach to fish idea. Absolutely is, isn't it? And so interesting times with the advent, possibly. They're trialing it in the United Kingdom, giving people 1,600 British pounds a month, I think, and seeing how that goes. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, I'd be interested in what else are they giving? Are they giving any education with it? Are they requiring financial literacy training as part of that? Or are they just simply giving money?
My darkest fear is that you'll be promising not to go outside your 15-minute city in return for the money. Anyway, that's just my jaundiced view of it. John, as Barandi says, it's always great to hear from you. You're celebrating your love of the north of Portugal, your worldview as well. Talking of your love of Portugal and the worldview, here's some more. This will be a view of the River Lima, Ponte De Lima there, and you can see the old women's prison. Where some would have ended up in probably again with financial difficulties. That's often the reason why women end up in prison, isn't it? Is because
that's my background.
That is. Have you got the same one there? Oh, yes, it's the same picture that you've got there. Beautiful. And of course, talking of the Romans, as we were before, that's the leader, isn't it? Of the
that's General Brutus Gaius. I'm saying it in a Portuguese accent. Brutus Gaius, something or other.
Oh, that is actually his name. Sorry, I thought if I can just make up Roman names at will, can't you? Like Brutus Maximus Gaius.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Ubius. Looking out, and there's a lovely contrast there, isn't there? Of the sort of modern plastic boats on the water. And
maybe the legionnaires, rather than wading across, took those kayaks. I think that would have been a little bit more convenient.
That would make such a better story, wouldn't it? So, John, loved Pam and all our friends in the north of Portugal. Here's Mrs. M to say hello.
Hey, Mrs. M, love you.
Honoured here with the presence of Mrs. M on the screen. Cheers, John. Thank you so much. We'll talk more about UBI now. All the best. Love to everybody up there. Ciao, ciao. See you, mate. Bye for now. Excellent. Then there we had Tony Time, Antonio Barbosa. Check him out at infinite-solutions.pt, and John there with his sharing his love of the North and a bit of his worldview as well. Agree with you, Randy. Always great to talk to. He's another voice of reason, isn't he? He's our American voice of reason, I would say. We've got Garvo, the British voice of reason, and there's João de Norte for you there, joining us every month. What is this, Mrs. M? Is it the first or the second Tuesday of the month? I'm not sure. It's got to be, isn't it?
It's the first.
Thank God you're an astrologer, and is your knee
manage
all right?
I can manage a diary.
And you thank goodness you can manage a diary. Well done. Okay, UBI then. A very interesting thing. Now, that Mrs. Emma's put her fader up like she's really ready to speak on this matter.
Yeah,
I
really want to hear the considered piece that somebody sent you.
Right,
that's got my interest.
Okay,
and I have a few suspicions as to what might be going on, but I don't know. I'm really open-minded. I do have some thoughts for sure.
All right, here's an essay then, and we welcome this. We are a snakeskin photo. We can't move on until we've had a look at the snakeskin photo. And if I say to you that Owen discovered his snake in the herb patch, that does conjure up quite an image, doesn't it? But it's a true story. He did see. He found a great big snakeskin in the herb patch yesterday. So I need to just show you that before we talk about it. Do you think is there a connection between snakes and UBI? We'll find out, won't we? Let's have a look.
There is.
The snake in the grass of UBI. But this is the what Owen discovered yesterday, I believe, in his herb patch. Just coming through now and sent to us on 913-590-303. Got some weird comments yesterday from somebody in Colorado who said, "Are you live now? We're trying to comment on the show." We broadcast in the mornings. I can't remember what your name was. Send us a message on that number and we'll play it for you. I'm doing my best to be here as often as possible. I'm sorry it didn't work out for you. There's the snakeskin. It's a thing of beauty, that, isn't it? Not enough to make a handbag or pair of
no, but it's beautiful,
sneakers.
Isn't it?
That's loafers, snakeskin loafers from, but it is beautiful in its own way. And that would have some people absolutely having their flesh creep right now. And the analogy being made between politicians and snakes already, we haven't even started reading about UBI yet. So what I'm saying is if you've got an essay or a blog of this kind that's a conversation starter, very glad to share it. And you don't have to all phone in today. You know, our conversations can be ongoing. We like the long form here. We're an ongoing community. You don't have to sort of do chapter and verse and case closed mic drop like people tend to want to do on phone-ins and TV shows and so on. Susie's on the way to...
You know what? It's not a conversation, is it, actually, if it stops? Like a conversation is ongoing. By its very nature ongoing.
That's right. I saw a fellow, the Kung Fu medic,
he's
do
great.
a brilliant rant on Twitter yesterday, which he took down because he said he'd come out with some wrong information during his rant. I sent him a message saying, Suze, have a great day, by the way, in Porto car shopping on a road trip with Baddie. That would be a great movie, wouldn't it? Road trip with Baddie. The Kung Fu medic, you know, we do make mistakes, especially when we're excited and emotional and wanting to get something off our chest. And I think it's right to be assessed not on everything you say, but over the long term, you know, not to have your words cherry picked and sand-bitten and to be used against you by unworthy assassins. But, you know, let's keep talking to each other, for goodness sakes. Global Nobles here. Bon dia todos. Good morning to you, Global Nobles. Lovely to have you here joining us just as we read this about UBI this morning. So it's called Guns or Butter. I am not a communist, it begins, and certainly do not subscribe to UBI, which, in case you're wondering, what are they talking about? Isn't that guy who watches the Good Morning Portugal show, Ubi? No, this is UBI, Universal Basic Income. However, continues this writer, neither do I subscribe to the diversion of the commonwealth into the hands of the few at the expense of the many. Now, there's something we can recognize at the moment, right?
Yeah, and I think we could probably all agree with that, most likely.
Unless you're one of the few.
Yeah.
Nonsense. It's all an equal opportunity. You're just sour because you're not getting your share of the wealth. The world, more specifically Western nations, and forgive me, writer, author of this piece, I will be interjecting, as I'm sure Mrs. M will be too. The world, more specifically Western nations, have sufficient surplus wealth to provide free water, electricity and bread, just as we enjoy free air and free sunlight. And that's what I was getting at. That is real UBI, isn't it? We do have sufficient unto the day, the gifts of life, breath, light, and there's enough to go around for people. What this writer is not happy about, after free water, electricity, bread, air, and sunlight, is this is not a call for communism, it's a call for re-establishing the basics of any society which would call itself civilized. Unfortunately, we instead have, and in brackets have always had, venally corrupt leaders, vested political interest and the influence which can be bought with accumulated wealth. In aggregate, people are not nice, says this writer. Humans are a vicious, nasty and self-serving bunch of animals, and we are all humans and would each behave just as badly were we sitting at the top of the pile. Discuss in brackets. We'd like to think not, wouldn't we? But he might be right, of course, or she. This is why we have laws. And when the justice system itself is corrupted, then society itself unravels into might is right and the survival of the richest. In the UK, we no longer have legal aid in any meaningful sense, whilst in the USA, legal process has been politicized and replaced by plea bargains. This is not a civilization. It is a law of the jungle. Give us a principled legal system applied fairly, consistently, and above all, predictably, and you won't need UBI. In my third year at university, I did my jurisprudence thesis on the nature of property. In brief, I believe that ownership of property leads inevitably to warfare because property is, by its very nature, not the right to enjoy something, but the right to deny someone else the right to enjoy it. I own leasehold flats, and ultimately the freeholder will get the properties back. But until then, I let them out to tenants. The tenants may invite guests over for dinner or be burgled by uninvited guests. The physical building is none the wiser for any of these little charades we play around it. And at the end of the day, the real power lies in who has their hands on the front door key and can thereby keep all the others out, even if they themselves are not at home. I trace this back to a Roman religious ceremony which gave rise to the Roman civil process of mancipatio. I hope that I've made sense of that and pronounced that correctly. Whereby title to slaves, real estate, and other key assets was transferred. The magic in this ancient ritual lives on today every time with a key press on the till in your local supermarket results in a beep sound or a bell dings when the cash register opens. That is interesting, isn't it? You're no longer a shoplifter, potentially. You are the owner because somebody's hit the right button on a till and a transaction has taken place. And the ritual acted out in the process of emancipatio is and was one of assertion. This is not yours. Property is not theft in the Marxist sense. Property is the right to deny, the right to exclude, the right to impoverish. And for this reason, my personal preference would be to see the removal of property status from basic essentials such as food, heating, and housing. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? What an erudite bunch we are, the Gumpers here. These should be provided or at least heavily subsidized by the state. Ask your mum about the housing supply. Something like 80%, for example, in Singapore, is either owned or was built by the government. That's interesting, isn't it? So you think of a super capitalist state like Singapore, 80% there of the housing supply built by the government, perhaps, or is either owned or was built by the government. Actually, in my opinion, Singapore is the last remaining genuinely Soviet state. Isn't that interesting? Says this writer. But that is a rant for another day and is more about state-owned businesses and military service. Anyhow, forget UBI, give them a council house, an allotment, free school meals, and 1 or 2 lucky breaks, and people will sort themselves out. At least that's the formula that worked for me in the 1960s. That's very sweet, isn't it? Blending personal experience and some academic knowledge there. Thank you very much for that, writer of that blog piece, and a wonderful thing to share, as we are happy to do on the Iberian FM phone-in, as a little bit of food for thought there. We can leave it there, Mrs. M, because I know you want to get on into the studio, but I think you might have 1 or 2 things to say about the UBI.
Well, no, because I haven't actually read up about what it consists of.
Right. Our conversation this morning was that without context, and if you just give money without context or any other things to go with it, i.e. like financial literacy, you might just be exacerbating some of the problems we already have in society.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember quite bitterly how the government was giving out sort of family allowance and things like that. And
upon which people become dependent as their formula for living.
Well, just how they calculated it. And then all of a sudden, without you knowing, you find out that it's about to be taken back.
Family credit, yeah.
Yeah, like giving out money, but then saying, "Oh, hang on a sec, you've had too much. We need to take it back."
Okay,
which
actually is fair enough, though, isn't it? But...
well, fair enough, but I don't think it was done in a very transparent and understandable way. In the same way as if they're giving out this money, it needs to be put into some context so people understand. So I don't know enough about what's being proposed.
You soon will.
I suspect, just because I'm a bit on the cynical side. I suspect will be made to pay for it in some way, shape, or form. Are you
connecting possibly lockdown and control of people?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. Okay. I do think what we've been through over the last few years was almost like a soft launch.
Foreplay, you might call it.
Yeah, well.
For a deviant sexual future.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who it was titillating necessarily. But
I don't want to know either.
I didn't get particularly turned on by it.
No.
I did get aroused, but in a kind of like my soul got
angry.
Okay. Something inside me roused up. So it was quite useful from that perspective. But,
right.
I suspect that what's going on like Pete mentioned, it had been very successful in Africa.
Yep.
I've heard of different countries proposing it. I suspect there'll be something like that coming to Europe at some point, sort of couched as a soft launch. Let's just try it out. And then when it comes back and everyone's already got used to it, it will come with a ton of conditions. For instance, that it has to be online, has to be attached to a mobile phone, has to be
digital
attached.
Currency.
Yeah, it has to be attached to social credit scoring, which on one level sounds really great.
Hold on a minute.
What? Which on one level sounds fantastic because everyone's going to behave really nicely, but by whose standards?
Oh, I see. Coming back to our contribution there.
Yeah.
If people can't behave nicely, we can incentivize them to do it with this new system.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And by behave nicely, that could bearing in mind.
decides?
the UN probably, because the UN recently has been, I think a lot of countries have just recently signed over their rights to govern their countries. If the UN calls,
are we talking about the UN or the WHO?
Oh, it might be the WHO. One of them. They're kind of interchangeable from my perspective.
Yeah.
But there has been some kind of treaty put in place so that if a pandemic is called, everyone who signed up has to take their governance from the WHO or the UN or whoever the.
But at least you'll have some digital currency in your wallet.
No, but you'll have a mandated. You have a mandated, stated this is what has to happen, and I suspect that will be all tied in and sewn
incentivized, possibly.
Yes, maybe incentivized is the way forward. I mean, the thing is, I've been reading up about like the idea of 2030. Initially, it was 2012, and then the documents went to 2020, 2021, and 2030. So they've been revised. Proposals for a new world order.
This is part of a plan. This is all sounding very conspiracy theory right now.
Well, no, I mean, you have to think about it. Like, our kids, they know our governance on a day-to-day level, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
They probably don't have an idea of what our long-term aims are. And similarly, governments see us like little kids that need to be done to, because they would ruin it if they did it themselves.
And it would be irresponsible for them not to have forward plans for the future of humanity.
So, but I mean, like, their forward plans are much more extensive than our kind of rough, let's put a finger on a map and this might be where we are in 5 years. Okay. Their plan is very, I suspect, is very, it's long term, which, like I posted something about Brexit a couple of days ago. I don't think it actually made much difference whether we Brexited or remained, because ultimately the people who really hold the strings to everything, they'll get their way anyway.
Again,
it might just be
piece that we heard,
might just be a small deviation, which to the likes of you and I and people, well, not really for us, hasn't it affected us, but for people who are coming backwards and forwards in their retirement, expecting to make that easy, for it to be easy, they'll be struggling with that.
Well, and it keeps people fighting each other, doesn't it?
Exactly.
All right.
But anyway,
well done, governments.
So yeah, I do suspect there's something a little like that going on. Right. I don't know for sure. I'm not well researched.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on it.
I really liked that treaty that you put out there. I do suspect, and this has been spoken about in different areas, that there will be an air tax at some point.
That used to be just a thing that was made. People made jokes about in the 70s.
Do you know what?
They're going to start taxing air. How do you mean?
Well, if people, that's a good point. But given that water is such a commodity, we need it to survive, and that, like Nestle, for instance, has fought for the rights for even people's catchment. So where people have actually collected their own water, Nestle in the US has sued them.
Well, you mustn't interfere with the company's profits in that way.
Because what they're catching doesn't go back into the rivers that Nestle believe they own.
Harms their financial future.
Well, there's nothing to say that same way of profiteering can't be addressed and attached to air. If you think about it, people are putting forwards like the idea of carbon tax, and that just by the mere effects of living and going about your day-to-day business, you're affecting the collective. They could say the same about air. And the recent things that Trudeau's government have been talking about, making it easier to euthanize a homeless person because they can't afford to look after themselves and the state don't want to do it. Obviously, they have their own choice.
Mr. Sam, you're turning into one of those callers into a phone-in.
Oh, sorry.
That hijacks the original topic.
Yes, my apologies.
To talk about other things.
I do think what this person, unnamed person that wrote that lovely treatise.
Yes.
I think, when they spoke about air and water, they've got a point. Like every other creature on this planet, apart from the ones that we look after, they live freely.
They live freely. That's why we love looking at them, isn't it? That used to be us.
The butterflies, the bees, they all do their own little work in their own little way. They're born knowing who they are. That's the funny thing, isn't it? And yet us humans don't seem to know that, which is weird.
Therein lies the possibility of another debate. Who are we? What are we? And what are we doing?
And I have to say, I don't quite agree with the idea of self-serving animals. Like, are we?
I didn't really like hearing that.
I do think we are self-serving, but I think that's because we've been raised in that way. I am much more hopeful for humanity when we start working together.
At which point, some listeners will be saying, "Oh, bless," and others will be saying, "Yay, right on! We're so much better than we're currently."
I think we really are, and I think what we hear in the media is, and in the news, is just deliberately pitted to depress us and make us doubt each other.
Okay, finally.
So there you go. That's my 2 penny.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for our main contributor this morning. That was excellent. IKEA now offers legal services should you need them, but you have to build your own case.
That's very good.
And if a bit of life advice to finish with, thank you to T-Duck for this. Have a successful day-to-day, T-Duck. If a telemarketer calls, give the phone to your 4-year-old and tell them it's Santa.
Very clever.
Good stuff. And we'll see you tomorrow. We'll be talking to Michael Heron and Bobby O'Reilly tomorrow. And actually, to answer your question earlier on, Steve, there will be a meetup in San Martino de Porto, but I won't be at it. I'm making my way to Lisbon tomorrow. So join us for Ask Anything About Portugal Wednesday on the Good Morning Portugal show tomorrow from 8:30. And I'm looking forward to going into the big city tomorrow. Have a great day.
It's going to be good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. Have a great day, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow for a bit more malarkey and those things that make you go, moments as well on the Iberian FM phone-in, perhaps as well. Ciao.